Happy Monday, everybody. This is Keylime here again with another weekly preview video, and this time around, at least on the PC mobile side, we got some pretty crazy stuff going on this week. So I'll start as always in the event keys. So in the event keys this time around, we have Drifting Sands troops. So if we check out what's all up in the Drifting Sands troop area here, we can see that we have basically nobody. But Scorpius is in there, so there's a lot more poison options being added into the game, so Scorpius may have some value here. However, I wouldn't necessarily recommend spending event keys to try and get him. He does this 1 to all stats for brown allies every turn thing, which is pretty slow. His main gimmick is that he kills people that happen to be poisoned. So overall, there's nothing really crazy in here, so I wouldn't really recommend opening up event keys all that much this week, unless you really wanted Scorpius for some reason. But that's pretty much it. As far as what we've got in the Glory Troop section here, so we've got Scaraby, or Scaraby, whichever you'd say. So basically he's doing damage to 2 random people and then stunning and poisoning them. So as I mentioned, this poisoning thing seems to be becoming a more often debuff that's out there, which may make Scorpius a little more valuable. However, I would rate this troop pretty poorly. Even though you have fast mana start and 20% skull dodge, their spell effect is really not all that useful. The damage is going to be fairly weak. Ends your turn, there's no loop potential. There's nothing really all that exciting. It is a monster, however, so it would get pumped up by the Dervish class. But for the most part, I would recommend just snagging it so you got it, but nothing really all too crazy or too special. I don't really see us being able to do too many crazy things with it. As far as the event this time around, we have the Tower of Doom. So this is actually going to complete our doomed weapon collection here. So please make sure you're buying up to the 4th tier here, so that way you can get it. And as far as the teams that you'd want to be using, it's going to be restricted by yellow. This was the team that I came up with real quick this morning. I suspect this should be fairly effective as you are getting Mang, you have tons of mana generation, and then you have tons of skull converting going on here. This team should be very, very effective as far as punching your way through the Tower of Doom. So feel free to either steal this, improve upon it, whatever you would like to do. This team is missing a cleanse, which may end up becoming a problem. So if you're looking for a cleanse to be added into this, just feel free to replace probably Quillen in here with somebody that would be cleansing instead. Mana should not be a problem with this team, however. Between Harpy Mage and Divine Ishbala, you'll be pumping out mana like crazy, so... this team should be effective, as I mentioned. So that is the Tower of Doom. Again, make sure you're coordinating with your guild, so that way everything is going all hunky-dory for you guys as well. In the Soulforge this time around, as far as the troops that we're getting access to, so the notable mythics I would say would be Ketris, of course, super hard nuker guy. So if you pump up his stats, his nuke just gets even crazier. He's gaining stats every single time you match red gems. So really strong troop, one of the hardest single target nukes that's in the game, and then it also splashes onto 2 other people. So that's also pretty cool. So Ketris is somebody I would say if you don't have him, he may be worth taking a glance at. Worldbreaker is also somebody else that's in there, so he's a very basic troop in terms of what he does. He's basically just blowing up the entire board and dealing a decent amount of damage to everybody on the other side. He also has this insane growth thing, which gives him +5 to a random stat on 4 or 5s. The only stat you'll really care about is magic, so that way you can be doing more damage to everybody. He does have one of the highest mana costs in the game, however. Overall, I'd say he's pretty decent. Like, if you're just looking for a troop to add into your lineup that's going to add value, like, you can't really go wrong with a World Breaker. I mean, tons of mana generation, really decent damage. I would not recommend Suna or Tianyi, unfortunately, as far as crafting goes. But that's pretty much all the cool stuff that's in the Soulforge from that point of view. As far as weapons that are in there, so there's this Blade of Sands. It's a very awkward weapon. It's doing a one-shot of damage and then removing green gems only if there's a dust storm, and then it makes a dust storm. Looking at the upgrades that are available on it, there's really nothing all that interesting either. So would not recommend Blade of Sands as far as a crafting weapon goes. Really not that worth it. But there is a Crystal Axe in there. So Crystal Axe is a weapon that's doing a mix of mana based on monsters. And of course there's the Dervish class, and of course there's a lot of really cool monsters. So being a mixed weapon that works with monsters, I would say that this is probably worth having, since we have an entire class in the Dervish that's actually pretty good. I think that this weapon will have some value. I've put some teams together that use Crystal Axe, for instance. So I think worth crafting if you're jumping in there. So that's everything that's immediately available to us in the game. As far as events that we have, on Tuesday we've got the Faction Assault. It's for the Stone Song Irie, so make sure you jump in there and do that. The team that I was using is using like a High King Iron Gut, a Sledge Paw, and a Mountain Crusher. So jump in there, do all your fun stuff, get your Stone Song Irie up. That should be fun. On Wednesday we're getting a new pet called Rockweiler, so that's kind of fun. But then on Friday we are getting a new class. So this is going to be a rogue style class, and it is it's interesting. So the most thing of note about it would be this trait here. So its third trait that it gets access to is 2 bonus blue mana on blue matches. And what's kind of interesting about that is that is the highest amount of bonus mana that we can get in a single trait. But then you also get Water Mastery at level 70 here in the water tree, which gives you yet another bonus blue mana. So you can imagine if you have this class fully traded and up to level 70 and you're running a banner that's giving you +2 blue, you can be getting 5 extra blue every single time you match blue. So like in terms of blue mana generation, this class is going to be insanely crazy. That's kind of interesting, but that's kind of the only thing that's interesting about it. The only other thing of note I would say about this class is that it has access to Hunt, which is obviously an amazing level 1 talent to be picking up, which is just hunters marking random people. But nothing really else about it is of note. It'll be snap freezing somebody at the start, but again, that's only if you choose to take that over Hunt, so that's kind of tough. Unfortunately, talent-wise, there's nothing too crazy or exciting in here. The Wind Tree is overall pretty uninspiring. Water Tree gets access to some pretty cool stuff. Cunning Tree, you at least get access to Dodge, but again, you would be taking Dodge, which is a 30% chance to dodge skulls, over Water Mastery, which is that extra bonus blue. So I don't think there's going to be too much awesomeness with this class, unfortunately, unless you're just trying to build a team that's pumping out tons of blue mana. That would really be the only reason to look at this class, unfortunately. The fact that it's a rogue, there's not a whole lot of synergy going on with rogues, at least not yet. So, you know, overall, I think it's an okay class. The weapon, however, is also kind of weird. So this weapon is doing magic damage to 2 random enemies, boosted by the total amount of gold that you have and your enemy has, by a 1x. So if you imagine any kind of skull kind of lineup, like let's just say the skeleton key team, for instance, normally that's doing about 120 some odd damage to 2 people, and that's a 2-to-1 boost ratio. So if you use that exact same team with this weapon instead, you would be doing like 220 damage to 2 people. So that gets kind of crazy. So that might become a new meta kind of offense team. Like Skeleton Key is doing, you know, basically half the damage that this weapon does. The other either benefit or detriment, that's up to you, is that this is hitting 2 random people versus just the top and the bottom as well. So in terms of total damage output, I mean, it's based on all your gold and their gold. Granted, the odds are that they're not going to be running some kind of gold lineup just like you will be, so the amount of boost you'll get from their gold isn't all that high. However, since the boost ratio is higher than the Skeleton Key and the amount of, boost is a lot higher, the potential is a lot higher since it's based on your and their gold, this is definitely going to be an interesting weapon to have. It doesn't have any kind of loot potential like the Skeleton Key does, however, the amount of raw damage it can do is just a lot higher. So probably way more noteworthy is going to be this weapon than the class itself, unfortunately, but still pretty interesting. But that is everything that's going on the PC side of things for this week. Jumping over to the Switch side of things, in terms of the event keys for you guys are actually getting Dragon Claw. So if we look at Dragon Claw, well, let's just do that, and then go to Dragon Claw, like I was intending, we can see what we get access to. So really of note, Elamogram's pretty interesting. So he's creating a decent amount of purple. It's boosted by burning enemies by a 1-to-1, so not super strong. Admittedly, it's kind of hard to create burning with a team that's using Elamogram. I've tried many times. Totally you can, it's just hard to do it. Infernus seems like a pretty natural pairing with him since he'll get you the burning and he also takes purple. But he's doing damage to all, but most notably would be this decreasing all enemy attack by 4 on 4 or 5 matches. So if you have a team that's able to loop very heavily with Elamagram in it, you'll just reduce the entire enemy attack down to 0 pretty quickly. So he's pretty interesting to grab. I'd say he's worth opening up a handful of chests to get, but not necessarily dumping everything you got. Divinia's also in there. Divinia's probably my favorite defensive troop in the game, just exploding the board, cleansing everybody, and healing everybody. You're also getting this random positive status effect on 4 or 5 matches for a random ally. So overall, just a really, really strong defensive troop to add into your lineup. I think it's worth getting him if you don't have him already. And of course, the Dragon Soul's in there. So if you're trying to just get some access to early soul grinding, having just the Dragon Soul in your lineup is pretty cool. The damage he does isn't all that interesting, however, you are getting souls every time you cast him, and he's exploding the board. So in terms of just raw mana generation, he's obviously going to be very nice. The damage is pretty decent. There's really nothing too crazy in here as far as traits go, but in terms of just passively gaining souls and having a decent amount of mana generation and a decent amount of damage, Dragon Soul is somebody that if you get him early on, he can really help your soul economy early. So if you're having trouble getting souls, I would strongly recommend trying to get someone like the Dragon Soul and then using him passively in your team so that way you can just be getting more souls over and over and over again. As far as new troops that we're getting access to, so there's Egg Thief in there, which is very interesting. So Egg Thief is somebody that's destroying a bunch of gems boosted by the amount of gold you have, and then you're also gaining gold, and then you're summoning dragon's eggs. So they're also stealthy, and they have this 20% skull dodge thing. You're also getting bonus gold on 4/5s. So basically, Egg Thief is probably one of the best mana generators in the game, just simply because they destroy these gems that they're hitting, and it's boosted by gold. So when you get this up to a really high number, you're basically just like totally evaporating the entire board and getting all the access to the mana that it's generating as a result of that. So if you have a storm running of any kind and you destroy a bunch of the board, you're more than likely going to keep your turn, and you're just getting tons of mana as a result. So Egg Thief is somebody that's very high value, definitely somebody that's used certainly in the most classic like PvP team that's using the Skeleton Key from the Thief class, and then using all this gold gaining, and then using Cedric that you can pull from the Gnome Vaults, just so you can boost your max gold. So overall, a very efficient mana generator. As long as you have some method of gaining gold, like using a troop like Greed, for instance, you can use someone like Egg Thief to just get you tons and tons and tons of mana. So Egg Thief is pretty cool. And then we're also getting access to Lady Garnisha here. So Lady Garnisha is doing damage boosted by their armor, and then of course it's doing 3 to 5 based on your ascensions, increasing a random skill by 3 every time you cast her. So her gimmick, of course, is like you probably want to try and be boosting her armor to make her do more damage. That's like the way that they want you to be using her. And then, of course, she's got this reducing skulls by 30% and then doing 3 to 5 on bosses. I really wouldn't recommend putting her in the top slot, however. Again, when it comes to killing bosses, you have to kill down to the boss in order to make this effective, so you would have to keep this person alive the entire time. So that can be kind of complicated. So not necessarily recommended to put her in the top slot. However, in terms of boss killing, it does at least have potential to be boosted by a decent amount. So even if you don't ascend her too much, if you find some way to get her armor up, that could be a way to do it. And of course, the way that you can do that is with the new weapon that they gave us. So if we look into the shield that we just got this time around, we get access to Volcanic Shield. So this is giving armor to an ally, and then if they're using red mana, you're giving them double that armor. So of course, Lady Garnisha is red, so this would be giving them a ton of armor. And then it's also, since it's a boss event, and this thing specifically says if they're a boss, you explode all reds. So in this instance, it's going to give a bunch of armor to Lady Garnisha and then blow up the board. So that's kind of cool. If we look into its upgrades, there's really nothing too crazy in here. It does bury yourself, however, there's nothing really else of too much note in here. So the thing about this weapon is that this weapon does have very high value as far as this event goes, but it kind of like loses it from there. Like the odds of this thing specifically being useful to you in any future boss events is kind of pretty low. And unfortunately, this weapon itself really only has value during boss events, because just giving a decent amount of armor is not really all that noteworthy. There's a bunch of other things that give a lot more armor a lot more quickly. and it doesn't do any of its exploding unless there's a boss. So, I mean, you can use this weapon, you can get this weapon, just know that you probably won't touch it again after this event, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting a whole bunch of resources into this thing. But if you do end up building a team with this, not the worst weapon in the world, certainly. As far as the event goes, the team that I put together for the Switch side of things, this was the team that I came up with, so you can tell I'm not using the Volcanic Shield here, I'm just opting to use a Mang lineup with lots of mana generation. So this is Mang, of course, stealing all armor and getting into attack. Lord Ember here is turning a bunch of stuff into red, Davinia is just blowing up the board and cleansing herself, and then Lady Garnisha is just there to pop the boss whenever you can. So with this kind of a lineup, you'll basically be able to get lots of board mixing up with these two troops, just generating a bunch of red and then also blowing up the board and cleansing, and then also giving yourself a little more life. So overall, I think this team will be very effective. I run it with Dragon Guard because if you're running this with Dragon Guard, you'll be pumping up Lady Garnisha's damage that way, because every 4 or 5 match you'll be doing, you'll also be pumping up her stats. You'll also be pumping up Davinia's stats. Lord Ember is also giving magic to everybody on your team, so that will also be helping. And then Dragon Guard also gets access to Skull Reduction. So overall, I think Dragon Guard is probably the best class to be running for this specific event. So that's the team that I came up with for the Switch event specifically. As far as what you guys get access to in the Soul Forge this time around, so as far as the mythics that you guys got access to, so Jotner's in there. I rate Jotner pretty highly, however, admittedly, he's not somebody that you end up using all that much. The amount of true damage you can be doing is very, very high since it's boosted by barriered allies and giant allies. So if you're running a team of 4 giants, he's also burying everybody on 4 or 5, so it's very likely that when you shoot him off, you'll be getting a ton of boost out of this. So you could be getting anywhere up to like 58, I believe, 56. 56 boost out of this if you have all giants and all barriered. And this is true damage, so he can more or less just like assassinate whoever he wants. That's pretty cool, and the ability to be passively burying people is also pretty cool. He does require a very specific lineup, however. You are limited to just giant allies if you want to take full advantage of the boost on his ability. He's pretty cool. I don't know if I would recommend spending a ton of keys on him, however, or spending a lot of resources, I should say. However, you also do get access to Yasmin's Chosen, who I would argue is the best one available to you guys this time around. So she's entangling a random enemy when you match green gems. She's also creating a decent amount of green gems with creating 10 by herself. And then she's also doing a bunch of split damage, which means she's just hitting everybody on their side. And this is boosted by entangled enemies. So for every single person you have entangled, it's doing an extra 10 damage. So overall, Yasmin's Chosen, pretty cool. Definitely, you guys are missing some of the cool synergy that comes with her that is available to you later as the game gets updated. However, as far as just like a mythic goes, she's definitely pretty solid. The fact that you'll be entangling a bunch of people on their team gives you a lot of natural protection from skulls yourself. It's also boosting her damage, and the damage she's doing isn't the worst thing in the world at all. And she's a very decent mana generator by creating a bunch of green. So if you're running a team that has a lot of green mana generation capability, having somebody like Yasmin's Chosen on your team is definitely pretty cool. Again, I would say she's like the best mythic you guys get access to, at least this time around. The other ones that are there is Urali. Urali, not very interesting. She's largely used purely for this. So if you have Scorpius and then you have Urali on the same team, you'll basically just poison everybody, and then whenever you can cast Scorpius, you kill them. Unfortunately, she pretty much never ever gets used in any other capacity. Nothing all that interesting with her ability per se. So would not recommend crafting. And then Scotty's in there, who is also actually pretty interesting. So the coolest thing about her is probably this, the fact that you can create an ice storm at the start of every turn. So this means that no matter what the other team does on their turn to like change up the storm or anything like that, she'll let you like keep it locked on ice storm. So this is pretty cool. She's also gaining magic every time an ally casts a spell, as most of the Glacial Peaks type troops do. So that's pretty cool. But then she's also doing this freezing and mana burning the first 2 enemies and then basically rotating them to the last position. And then if you happen to have an open slot, she'll make a Queen Mab. Of note is that Queen Mab will mana block her on both the blue and purple colors, so that's not the coolest thing on the planet. It's also not looping in any capacity, so basically if you're running Scotty, you're probably just keeping her passively in your lineup for this Ice Storm thing, and then trying to do a lot of cool stuff with blue mana. Running a Jar of Eyes with her, for instance, is obviously very naturally synergistic, since that will also be generating a bunch of blue mana. So overall, pretty cool troop. Admittedly not used that much, however, she is interesting, so you can do some interesting stuff with her, but her spell ability, unfortunately, is pretty uninspiring. It doesn't do too much. The switching up of the team and then the freeze is probably the most interesting thing. The amount of damage from the mana burn is usually not that exciting, and then summoning a Queen Meb can be helpful or hurtful depending on what's going on. And then lastly, the things that you get access to as far as a weapon to make is this Eggsplosion, which is very interesting. If I can spell it correctly, egg, there we go. So this is exploding 4 gems of a chosen color and then healing. It costs 15 mana though, which is kind of nuts, and it's only 1 color. So unfortunately, I wouldn't really recommend crafting this. However, it is a mana generation thing, so it does have loot potential, it does heal, but it's kind of like, it's not that interesting. Of note about heal is that heal is different than gain life. So healing will only get you up to your max health. So mine, for instance, right now is showing 82. If I had 81 health and then I cast this, I wouldn't magically go up to 102 or 112. I would just go up to 82. So gaining life is very different than healing life. Healing life will just get you up to your max. So overall, I wouldn't really recommend crafting this weapon. It's cheeky. I could see you using it on like Guild Wars Green Day or something like that. But overall, if you're looking for mana generation, there's a lot better weapons to be doing it with. So I wouldn't really recommend spending any resources to get in there. But that is everything coming on the Switch side of things. So that is what we've got going on this week on all platforms. Overall, there's definitely some interesting stuff to look forward to for everybody, I'd say, this time around. Especially on the PC mobile side with the new class. I'm interested to see what new class the Switch folks are going to end up getting access to. Unfortunately, we don't know ahead of time. However, make sure you're going in there, get your tiers up for all of those events that you got going on. Make sure that you're jumping into the Soulforge, doing what you need to do in there. As far as what I'm doing this week, I'll be posting some more videos this time around. I might be relaxing on the streaming a little bit this week since I'm actually going on vacation. So I'll be going from Wednesday night to Sunday morning, basically. Probably Sunday all day. So I'll see if I can record a decent amount of videos and get them scheduled out for you guys. Unfortunately, that means I probably won't be streaming at all. But overall, I'll make sure to keep some happy content going on the channel so you guys have something to tune into. But that is going to be everything from me this time around. So have an awesome week, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya.